Good evening. If you're just joining us now, we're going to make a start at 6 p.m. So good to have you with us. Won't keep you waiting too long. Hoping for a few others to join us, and then we will make a start at 6 p.m. Good evening. If you're just joining us now, good to have you with us. We're going to make a start in a few moments, so we won't keep you waiting too long there. Good evening. If you're just joining us now, good to have you with us. We've got lots of people joining us. We're going to make a start in just a couple of moments, so we won't keep you waiting too long. Okay, you'll see then in the chat, I've just asked if anyone would like to introduce themselves. That would be fantastic. There is absolutely no obligation, but I always think it's really good for networking. So we will start in just one moment. Let's just see if we've got any others that are going to be joining us this evening, and then we will make a start pronto. So this is a session which is looking at your HR career, driving it forward. It's a part of this week's focus of the annual review, which is the focus this year is on your career, getting you driving your career forward. And this session this evening is about getting professionally qualified in HR. So we've just got a few people more joining us, and then we are going to make a start. So welcome to you all. If you are just joining us now, really good to have you with us. Okay, I'm going to make a start because it's 6 o'clock by my watch. And so thank you to you all for getting here on time. Really good to have you with us. The session then this evening is about getting professionally qualified in HR. So I'm really hoping that you've got lots of questions. That's what I'm here for, to respond to those questions. So there will be an opportunity at the end to ask questions. But if there's anything that you think about along the way, then please do type those questions in the chat, and I will respond to those as we go. So welcome. My name's Kay Maddox Danes. and I've been working across academia and the private training providers for some years in the delivery, the design, the delivery of CIPD qualifications. And frighteningly, I remember the CIPD qualification from I think 2 or 3 iterations ago. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about what that's going to look like in terms of the new qualifications as we go forward, and a host of other things too. So as I say, welcome. Please do chat, introduce yourselves in the chat if you feel comfortable in doing that. Otherwise, do ask questions, and as I say, ask those as we go, just in case you might forget something, and if not, we can respond to those at the end of the session. So let's move on then. Choosing the right qualification for you. So this is what this session is all about. Now, this session is going to focus on a number of different points. So it might be that you're new to HR, you're thinking about whether or not you should get qualified, or it might be that you're in a slightly different place in terms of your trajectory and you're thinking perhaps of a career change, or you've been working in HR for a while and you're thinking, should I get qualified? How should I get qualified? So this is what this session is all about. All of those questions that you might have been considering, we're going to explore as we go through today. So, what are we going to cover specifically? So the agenda for tonight, why should we get qualified? Now that's always the first question. So I'm talking about how we're going to get qualified, but the first question, of course, is why should we bother getting qualified? And then we're going to move on and have a look at some HR professional bodies. Getting qualified with the CIPD. So the CIPD is the professional body that we're going to look at in more detail, as of course we are a CIPD branch, and this is a CIPD branch event. That's the one we're going to focus on this evening. And then we're going to move on to look at how and therefore the different ways in which we might get qualified. We're going to look at it through the university eyes, FE and training providers, and then to tailor it for school leavers and graduates, and then for career changers, so that we've got something in there for everyone, we hope. Now, I'm joined by my 2 colleagues this evening. I'm delighted to say we've got Kate Nuts joining us. Now, Kate is a learning and development career specialist, and I'm sure that Kate will say hello to you in the chat. And we've also got Eleanor Gunton, who is an HR advisor. And both of those are joining us this evening to talk about their experience too of different ways of getting qualified in the HR profession. So we will hear more from both of those in a little while, but thank you to you both so much for joining us this evening. Okay, so first question then, why bother? Why should we get qualified? Because it's not absolutely essential to get qualified in HR. There's many people who are working in the HR profession who indeed are not qualified. So what is it that we think perhaps drives us forward to get qualified? Well, the first thing is when we belong to a professional body, it gives the people that we're working with, stakeholders, an indication of our commitment to the profession and a sense of the expectations in terms of the style of delivery of the service that we're offering, in terms of the high standards and of course the professional code. Because when we sign up to a professional body, we're signing up to a professional code of conduct. So for example, when we join the CIPD, one of the elements of the professional code of conduct is our commitment to continuing professional development. So we agree to uphold our knowledge, skills and competencies by undertaking ongoing learning and development opportunities. So that's one of the areas in which we can prove our high standards through belonging to a professional association who recognises our previous knowledge, skills and experience. and we are committed then to ensuring that it's continuing as we go down through our career and through the upgrading in various positions that we might progress to. And then, of course, recognition of our expertise, but it also in many cases is, of course, an employer requirement, whether that be something in your organisation at the moment. Your employer might be keen for you to undertake qualifications. He or she might even, your line manager that is, be offering to sponsor you through those qualifications. So that is some of the ways why we might want to get qualified. Of course, because there are many people who are not qualified in the profession, it does help us to stand out. And that's particularly helpful when we are either going for internal promotions or aiming to gain an entry-level position into our new career. So that's a number of reasons why we perhaps might want to get qualified. So this is just a question in the chat. Who is already qualified? Who is already qualified? Okay, let me see. I'm just going to the chat and let me see. Oh, Liz, fantastic. Liz, so yes, I remember Liz, we worked together. 2014, wow, was it that long ago? Okay, so some of you will already be qualified in HR. Great, so Debbie's saying that she has her level 5. So, oh great, so some of you are level 5, level 7. Fantastic, good. So that gives me a sense of where we are. Okay, so as we're already here and we're talking about getting qualified, I'm assuming that we would like to know more about how we're going to do this. So just before we get started then in the CIPD, just for, I suppose, a sense of the international flavour of getting qualified, just to put it into context, the Society for Human Resource Management is the largest HR professional body in the world, based in the States. They've got about 300,000 members. And the CIPD is the second largest professional body. I'm just going to ask you to guess how many members the CIPD has. If you'd like to just type that in the chat. Okay, 3,000. So Kat's saying 3,000. Any other guesses beyond 3,000? How many members? If the largest, the Society for Human Resource Management, has a 300,000 in the United States, how many members do you think the CIPD has? Liz is saying about 100,000. It's a pretty good guess, Liz. Any other advances on 100,000 offered by Liz? 200,000. Oh, that's a good guess too. So fantastic. Oh, I don't know who this is, but it says Zoom user. 150,000, absolutely correct. Well done. Fantastic. So we have 150,000 in the CIPD. Do you know, when I first started, when I finished my CIPD qualification, which was about 20 years ago, and I hate saying that, there were about 20,000 members. So it's grown hugely in that short period of time. The third biggest HR professional body is the Australian Human Resources Institute. Now, just for your information, in case this might be of any interest, when we are a CIPD member, when we have achieved our CIPD professional qualification, that will actually be recognised in Australia because we have a reciprocal agreement with the Australian Human Resources Institute. So if you do get professionally qualified with the CIPD, or if you already are, then that will be recognised in Australia too. And then we've got the Singapore Human Resources Institute. We've got many smaller HR professional bodies too. But the US, the CIPD in the UK, but internationally also, because of course the CIPD have also now got offices in Singapore and in Dubai. providing a much more international flavour to our institute, which is fantastic. So the Australian one in third place at the moment, much smaller than the first two. So that's just giving you a little bit of context of the way in which the CIPD sit globally, and a little bit about the international flavour of them. So there are a number of different decisions that we need to make when we're thinking about getting qualified. One of those is where we should get qualified. So there's actually a number of alternatives these days. You can get qualified with the CIPD through an undergraduate degree. So some undergraduate degrees will have accreditation probably at level 5. There are a number of opportunities for postgraduate diplomas and master's degrees in universities. And then further education colleges run quite often the CIPD level 3 and 5. In some FE colleges, which don't have direct university competition, they may even run this level 7 too. So there will be different programs running in different institutions and different ways in which you can perhaps get accredited in universities and further education colleges. But biting at the heels of both of those are private training providers. So there has been an exponential growth in the degree of providers running many different forms of training. And what are the differences then? One of the things to think about is how you want to study, because each one of these areas will, institutions will provide you with different ways of studying. So in universities, you may see that it's still quite traditional. It's run on a semester time study mode. You start in September. There may, in some universities, be a January start, and then you'll run through until June, May-June time. So quite often in the universities, it will still be quite a traditional semester-based approach to getting qualified, and quite often that will be in the daytime. Some of them are going into the evenings too, but that will be weekdays. Same with further education colleges, quite traditional model, going through the traditional academic year, starting in September, going through to May, June time. Quite often still on a weekday, and then going through into the evening. But the private training providers allow you the flexibility to study in the week, at weekends, in the evenings, and increasingly by a number of different routes. So by digital learning, via online learning, which may or may not include a live online study mode. And then you have the opportunity to attend in person, not quite at the moment. I think that many providers are still holding off of that, but soon they will be returning to the traditional classroom-based. And then you have the opportunity to study weekdays, evenings, or weekends. Now, it does provide you with a lot of flexibility. The advantage of studying in a university or a further education college is that you have the support. So quite often what you'll find is the further education colleges and the universities will go at a slightly slower pace. You will have much more time, contact time with your tutor, and you will have the external, within the university, but you will have support beyond what your tutor can offer you in, for example, the specialist skills advisors in the library, these student support, and the careers advisors, and many other specialist functions. So that's really what you're paying for in the university, particularly, as opposed to a private training provider, where what you'll get is flexibility, but you'll have much less support in terms of the contact time beyond what your tutor is able to give you. So if you're the sort of person who's very self-motivated, who's very driven, doesn't really need that much time with their tutor, can just sort of get on with it, get through the assessments, then that's great, because the flexible route is really good with the private training providers. But if you think, well, actually, I'd quite like to have a little bit more support, perhaps not go at such a pace, then the universities are quite good in that respect. So it swings and roundabouts. You get a little bit more support, as I say, from the universities and further education colleges. And having worked at each one of these, I have a good sense of how they're positioning themselves. And of course, you know, it is about economics quite often, what they can afford to provide within the size of institution that they're operating within. But the other thing just to mention here is that there is something called the experience-based route. So if you have significant experience in one or more areas of the CIPD, a new profession map, which is linked to the new HR qualifications, then it's worth contacting either the university or FE college or private training provider, wherever you would like to study, and sending them your CV, your current job spec, person spec, and your CPD record, your plan, any evidence you've got of previous experience. So, for example, quite often when I'm running a program, what I have is students might say, well, you know, I have a number of years in recruitment, and I've done a lot of perhaps internal, external sourcing of candidates. I've managed the resourcing strategy or whatever. And so there may be the chance then to have that signed off as previous experience, which means you wouldn't have to take that assessment. You may have to still provide additional evidence in a portfolio sense, and you may have to have a professional discussion just so that it's clear how your experience aligns. But there is the opportunity, therefore, not to have to go down and do each and every one of the additional assessments for that qualification that you're interested in. So the experience-based route is most definitely something worth having a look at if that's relevant to you. Okay, are there any questions on anything that I've mentioned so far? I'm just going to check the chat. Nothing there at the moment. Okay, so for those of you who've already studied, who did you study with? Was it a university? Was it a further education college? Was it a private training provider? I should imagine we've got a few different experiences here. Okay, so question from Liz, she's saying she'd like to learn more about the experience-based route. So absolutely. So so as I say, what I would tend to do if I was the training provider is I would say, great, Liz, so I'm really pleased that you're looking at this. Can you send me your CV, your person spec and your job spec? So what I want to see is how exactly your experience aligns to the assessment criteria of the modules that you're going to be studying. So what we need to see is, in a university, for example, we write our own learning outcomes, and we would need to see how each one of those learning outcomes align to your experience, or other qualifications that indeed you may have undertaken. So that's what we would do. We would align any previous study and experience to those specific learning outcomes, and we would see whether or not it was possible for us to equate your experience to any prior study. So most definitely worth having a conversation with your training provider or university, FE college, whichever you're looking at there. So just reading through, thank you so much for sharing your comments here. So as I suspected, some of you learnt with have studied with a private training provider previously, some with university, and some with the FE college, which was great. So, so Debbie's saying she studied in a further education college, 1 evening a week in a classroom, and that was in addition to a full-time HR job. Yes, don't we know it? It's so hard, isn't it? Balancing working full-time and studying. However, saying that, it's a really good way of integrating theory with practice, and that's one of the things that we're going to talk about in just a moment. So let's move on then. The CIPD launched their new qualification suites at the beginning of this year. The early training providers started running their new programs in March of this year. So we have now the level 3 certificate in people practice, the level 5 associate diploma in people management or organizational learning and development, and then the level 7 advanced diploma in strategic people management or strategic learning and development. So there are now only these 3 different routes. The CIPD are now no longer running the certificate at level 5, and they're no longer running the opportunity to have awards. So previously, some students said, well, I don't really want to sign up for the whole level 7 program, for example, but what I am interested in is the employment law module, whereby they would be able to receive an award for that. So that's no longer possible. So the CIPD's intention was to simplify the qualification framework, which they have done through this qualification structure that, as I say, newly implemented. The training providers are running with it. The universities will take a year or 2, I would imagine, to get this validated, because they need to write their own programs that are in alignment with the new HR profession map, which is this one here, which has been updated to take account of particularly the analytics, the advances in technology, and the core theme of internationalization. So this is basically to update the owed qualifications. What we used to talk about quite often in the older CIPD qualifications was about adding value. And one of the arguments which quite often chief execs would say was, HR, they're a little bit on the reactive side, they're sort of a firefighter or administrative role. And the purpose, one of the purposes of this new qualification is to really focus on the analytics to support decision-making through an evidence-based approach. So much more in support of aligning the HR profession to the strategic decision-making of the organisation. So that's just a little bit about that. So that's what the new qualification looks like. As I say, it's in relation to this new HR profession map, and this is essentially what gave the core to the new qualifications. Now, as I say, there are a number of ways for you to get qualified, and we've spoken about the university and further education providers, but there is also an opportunity for you to be qualified through an apprenticeship route. And I wonder, Eleanor, if you're there, I've asked Eleanor to just say a few words about her experience of entering the HR profession as an apprentice in HR rather than going through the traditional qualification route, which might have been an undergraduate degree and then gaining some experience, etc. So, Eleanor, I wonder if you're there.
I'm here.
Fantastic. She is amazing. So Eleanor, would you like just to give us a little bit of context about how you got into HR and then the apprenticeship that you undertook in support of that?
Of course, I've put my camera on, but I don't know if you can see me.
I can, yeah, thank you.
Oh, you can, perfect. I just feel like it's so much easier to put a face to the name where you can all see me. So hello everybody. So I started my HR career around 4 or 5 years ago now, and I went down the apprenticeship route as Kay was just describing. When I was in school, I knew that I didn't want to carry on doing school, and being in the traditional route for me was not a plan. So I was like, I'm definitely going to be getting an apprenticeship. I'm definitely going to be getting an apprenticeship. And someone, a family friend, with a HR job description in my way, and was like, oh, have you ever thought about working in HR? I thought, no, funny you say that. I quite like people. I really enjoyed business, which I was doing at the time. So I thought, oh, I think this could be a bit of me. So I did a lot of searching on how I could find the best HR apprenticeship. And at the time, I don't quite know if it's any different now. They were really, really hard to come by. So I did lots of interviews. I did lots of rewriting my CV 10 million times, prepping for interviews every night to try and get that perfect apprenticeship. And in the end, I got an apprenticeship with a public sector company. It was a housing association. And I had 2 interviews with them. It went obviously very well for me, which I'm very grateful for. And they were also offering me to study my level 7 at the same, my level 3, sorry, at the same time. So while I was working and getting on the job experience, I was able to study 1 day a week towards my level 3, which took me about 18 months, I believe, at the time. And my employer funded that through the apprenticeship levy, and it went down that route, which was perfect for me. I had a tutor I met with once a month, so it was a bit more distance. It was all virtual, but I had one-on-one experience with them. They taught me through experiences, and I was really able to, through my apprenticeship, look back and think, wow, I've just applied that in a real life situation, which for me was brilliant, and as I think got me to where I am now, which is studying my level 7 at the University of Suffolk, which I kind of passed. Level 5 wasn't for me, and I decided that I wanted to go straight forward with the level 7. I think me and Kay had a discussion, didn't we, about my experience before I started, made sure I was suitable for the role and for the course, and spoke through that. So I started my, probably going back a bit here, sorry, but I did my apprenticeship. I was then promoted to a HR assistant and then again to an officer. And at that point, I then decided it was time to do my level 7, which was funded by my employer at the time, which to me, it was quite bizarre because my friends were all finishing university and I thought how university wasn't for me. And they were all coming out going, oh, I've got all this debt, And I was entering university, being luckily debt free at the time because my employer would pay for it. So it was really odd to see the cycle, I think, and how people can go to different routes, as Kay is saying about getting qualified, and really find that way. So I now work for a main contractor construction company in London, where they've carried on my educational sponsorship, which I'm really grateful for, and are fully supportive of my studies, and something that they are really engaged in, especially with the end of year project at the end. They I think they're a bit more excited than me, which seems a bit crazy. So that's how I've kind of transitioned into HR. I hope that I've covered everything you wanted me to as part of my apprenticeship, Kane. I didn't know if there's anything else you wanted to add.
Thanks, Eleanor. Yeah, I'm just going to ask you, I wonder if you could say a little bit more about the actual study component, so the actual qualification. Yeah. So, for example, who was supporting you? Did you have to go into college? What about assignments, completing assignments? Were you observed? Those sorts of things.
Yeah, so it was very much distance learning. So everything was online on a really snazzy portal. And we met once a month with my tutor. Sadly, my tutor changed quite a lot while I was there, but I think it was just the market at the time, not me, I hope. And it went through a real change in terms of, it was all on an online portal. The apprenticeship was it was distance learning, but it was really interesting to kind of get that experience from the tutor, who was someone that was really engaged with the sector. They had HR experience, get their input, and really also see the kind of the team as well, getting their input. You had two sides of it, which was really interesting for me. And how it worked, we had a subject each month, so there was something different we focused on. So maybe it was the function of HR one month. I'd have an assignment to complete, which was kind of compiled in a little booklet, if you will. My off the grid learning, which was part of my apprenticeship, and then my continuous personal development, and it all kind of formed a really nice little booklet as one. And I think that's similar to how a lot of level 3s work, correct me if I'm wrong, Kay, but that's what I completed each month, those 3 booklets each month on a different topic. And yeah, that was for 18 months, so I think there's around 16-17 modules that there were with my provider. And there was chance for me to ask any questions. They were just an email away, which for me was great, but there wasn't that face-to-face connect that I think you can get elsewhere. And certainly with the University of Suffolk now, they are introducing face-to-face back, so it's lovely to see some people. So it's a bit obviously contrasting in that respect, but it has its pros and its cons, like working from home does, and distance learning. I think they're both pretty similar in their pros and cons. So it's a challenge, but I think when you're in the sector and you've got people around you, it was really rewarding, and it was a path that really worked for me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Eleanor. And if you do have any questions for Eleanor, do type them in the chat, or feel free to take yourself off of mute and
Yes.
ask Eleanor. I'm sure she won't mind.
No, I won't mind. I don't bite. Or alternatively, if you want to just drop me a message on LinkedIn or something, I'm more than happy to answer any questions on there as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you, Eleanor. So Eleanor was talking through her level 3 apprenticeship. There are also opportunities to undertake apprenticeships level 5 and also level 7 now. So level 7 was introduced at the beginning of this year. I think some of the more forward-thinking training providers have developed programs to support the level 7. So definitely worth looking at that if that might be an option for you. So just focusing then on other opportunities in universities, the one that I have been very familiar with is both the undergraduate and the postgraduate route. So I just wanted to say a little bit more about that. So as an undergraduate, when you're looking for a program, if you know that HR is going to be a career perhaps that you might want to follow going forward, it's definitely worth looking for a course where you have an integrated CIPD accreditation, because many universities don't have this, but there are some that do. And if you leave with a degree, you've been successful in your degree and you've got the equivalent of level 5 accreditation at CIPD, with the CIPD, then you've got both a professional qualification and a degree, and that's for the same price as you would pay for your degree. If you're going then to go and look for a level 5 program after you've finished your degree, of course, that's going to take you additional time and it's going to cost you additional funds. So it's definitely worth, if you're thinking about getting a degree in HR, or perhaps a joint, there's a possibility of a joint honours degree. So it might be you want to do HR and psychology, or HR and sociology or something like that. It's still possible to get accreditation at level 5. Then there is the opportunity to get qualified at level 7. Now, level 7 is the highest qualification with the CIPD. So the level 7 qualification prepares you for roles in director of HR positions, in consultancy positions, the very highest level that you would hope to gain experience and excel in the profession. So where can you do the level 7? Well, as we mentioned earlier, you can do the level 7 with a training provider in some further education colleges and in universities. Now, the one which is quite popular in Suffolk, of course, is the University of Suffolk, and there is a picture of this here. There are, of course, many others that you may want to have a look at, because it really depends on your mode and your preference of learning. So some will provide you with the opportunity for distance learning, some will provide you with face-to-face learning opportunities, some will be in the daytime, some in the evenings, some at weekends. So it's very important to look at, firstly, what's going to suit you in terms of your flexibility to study. What is the best mode? How are you going to fit it into your life? Now, just before we go into talking more about other opportunities, let's hear from Kate, because Kate is a recent graduate of the postgraduate diploma in human resource management from the University of Suffolk. And it would be really interesting to hear, I think, from Kate, if you're there, to talk about perhaps why you signed up for the programme, Kate, and how was it, and how useful has it been since you've graduated?
Thanks, Kay. So my experience was I wanted to go to University of Suffolk because I wanted the social learning aspect of completing this. Didn't quite work out because we had COVID. So what was originally a face-to-face tutor-led programme then became an online programme for the second year. So I can talk from both angles of that, really. But I, in my infinite wisdom, went straight in at level 7, having not done anything since A-levels at 18 years of age, and I'm now in my 40s. So I won't pretend it was easy, because it really wasn't. But for me, that was because I had to understand and learn how to write from an educational perspective, from an academic perspective. So I wasn't just learning about the different roles within HR. I was also having to learn how to write assignments and how to do a 10,000 word dissertation. So I think I made it particularly difficult for myself. If you have studied more recently, I think you'll find it a lot easier than I did. Absolutely loved the course though. Again, one of my downsides was that I was in recruitment, and we didn't, and that's all I've ever done for the last 22 years. Up until more recently going into learning and development. But I found that I'd never really touched that much on employment law. I hadn't really done too much in learning and development when I first started the course. So all the modules were really new to me. Again, if you're in HR, you'll probably find it a lot easier than me because you already know the subject matter. So you're not necessarily having to learn the subject matter as well as how to write academically. So I feel like perhaps I originally bit off more than I could chew, and perhaps I should have started with level 3 and got up to level 5 and then level 7. But you know, I like a challenge, and luckily I have passed, so that's the main thing. But from the reason I wanted to do it is because I wanted to understand about all the different aspects of HR, and I'm glad I did, because I learned so much. And being with other people in the class, hearing about their own different organisations, that was a real help as well, because you can talk about employment law from a theory perspective, but it's not until you put it into practice and you hear how differently that different organisations tackle the same challenges. It was really interesting, and I guess that's what I missed when we went over to more online learning during COVID, because those conversations just didn't happen so much. And having been a facilitator face-to-face now and online, it is one of the challenges of doing it online. If I could give anybody any advice, my advice would be, if you can, do this course at somewhere like a university where you get that social learning with each other. You talk during your breaks. I just learned more in the first year than I did in the second, really, from that social learning perspective. But I already, even though I only passed in July, I already can see that having the level 7 has elevated me slightly. The types of conversations that I'm having with people, if I say, or they see on my LinkedIn profile that I've done level 7, There's a bit of kudos behind that, and a lot of people that have already done level 7, they know how difficult it is, and therefore they're kind of, for me, it's just really helped elevate my status in HR, really. And I think that was really why I wanted to do it, and it has definitely helped with that, as well as give me all the knowledge that I needed.
Thank you, Kate. That's fantastic. Really good insights there. And as you say, it's really good to compare and contrast the in-person delivery to the online delivery. Fantastic. So again, I'm sure that Kate won't mind if any questions are directed at Kate as we move through the session. If you want to ask Kate any questions, please do pop them in the chat, or we're going to have some Q&A at the end of the session. So if you want to take yourself off mute then, absolutely fantastic. So, but we'll come back to Kate and Eleanor in just a little while for perhaps to pick up any questions. But in the meantime, I just wanted to say a little bit about the master's degree. So when you've completed the level 7 diploma, so when you've completed the postgraduate diploma in HR, that is the highest level CIPD qualification, but you can top that up then with a master's, to a master's degree. Without too much additional work. Now, I say not without too much, it does depend on the provider. So you do need to shop around and have a look at different universities. So different universities will ask for slightly different variations and will ask you to do slightly more or less for this master's top-up. And I'll give you an example. At level 7, one of the modules requires you to build a dissertation, to compile a dissertation, to undertake a piece of research, to write a literature review, to write a methodology and put this together in a dissertation, which essentially is something that you want to explore. So it should be quite a nice piece of work. Now, that in some institutions in universities, for example, is 10,000 words. And if you want to upgrade to a master's degree, what some universities will ask you to do is undertake an additional module, which focuses on methodology, and then will require you to compile another dissertation, which will be around 15,000 words, maybe 15 to 18,000 words. So you do need to shop around, as I say, because some will require slightly more than others. Some will allow you to use your dissertation that you did in your postgraduate diploma and perhaps just extend that in some degree, or they will ask you to start again. So it's definitely worth having a good look around at different universities, their entrance requirements, and what they're going to require you to do. Of course, the other thing to note is that quite often they charge quite different amounts for their qualifications too. So as I say, definitely worth shopping around. So looking at then coming to some summary comments for school leavers and graduates. Now, one of the great things about the HR profession is that it is about experience, and then therefore to progress, it is about having that right experience in place. So it's not just about the qualification. So Eleanor's experience earlier of the apprenticeship route and Eleanor's fast progression in HR has been largely because she's both qualified and experienced. And that's just something to bear in mind if you are thinking of undertaking a degree without any experience. What I would recommend is you find opportunities for perhaps industry placements or internships. Or, of course, the alternative is to go down the apprenticeship route. If you find a degree that doesn't offer industry placements, etc., of course, volunteering is equally a sound way of developing experience. And there are many organisations, particularly in the third sector, that would be incredibly appreciative of your help, whilst giving you quite a broad brush opportunity to upskill in those key areas of HR, and basically just to gain lots of experience. So definitely worth having a look at experience as well as the qualification. The qualification on its own will only get you so far, but it will help enormously right at the beginning. Having both is really the key to get started. So just really to reiterate there, it is, if you've got experience, you can apply it to what you're studying, and that really helps to solidify some of those key theories, concepts, practices, etc. And then for career changes, so if you're perhaps in mid-career, or you've had a few roles prior to your current thinking that you'd like to progress in HR, thinking about what skills you can actually transfer. How are you going to use those in a role that perhaps you're interested in, and thinking about what is it that you're particularly interested in? Is there one role in HR that particularly excites you? Do you want to have a specialist or a generalist role? And then to think, if you want to upskill in terms of your qualifications, again, where and when to study. So those are just the points that we've started to tease out already. So there will be a flexible option to suit you and your lifestyle, your preferences somewhere, and it's just about researching the right place of study for yourself. Not also forgetting the opportunity for experience assessment, which might equally be relevant if you've picked up perhaps experience as a line manager, or, as I say, resourcing or learning and development in a slightly different way prior to the role that you're interested in. So definitely worth having a chat with the course advisor in the institution that you're talking to get a sense of what is going to fit you most effectively going forward. Okay, I'm going to stop talking now because I want to leave a little bit of time for Q&A. So if there's any questions at all that anyone would like to ask, then please do use this time. I think that I've covered the key points, but if there's anything that you think that I would like, that you would like to know, then please do ask away. This is your time now. Any of the qualifications, or perhaps any of the progression routes, anything I can help with. So please do feel free to take yourself off of mute, or type your questions in the chat.
Okay, I've got a question. I don't know, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, that's great. Hi,
Yeah,
Liz,
okay,
how are you doing?
Hi, I'm very well, thanks, Kay.
Good, good.
So I've been squirreling away doing HR. My kids are now, well, one's just gone off to uni and one's at sixth form, so I've now got a little bit of time on my hands, and it's been something I've been thinking about for a few years, about doing my next level. I've been chatting to Kate and she said just go for level 7, don't faff about, because I did level 3, as you know, with yourself. In terms of researching options for training providers and things, what would your advice be in terms of that side of things? I quite like the idea of an academic year because I think that would give you a bit of a break whilst you've got the rest of your life in a full-time job, but it might be something that, you know, I'd need to compare and contrast with. So that's part 1 of my question. Part 2 of my question is, how much of your experience-y bit would be taken into consideration? I didn't really understand. I know that, you know, you say, oh, you know, if you've got experience of this and this and this, you would, so you would still have to go along to the training or the lectures or whatever it is and still do the piece of work. Is that, I'm not entirely sure what how that all.
So absolutely great questions. Thank you, Liz. So if I just go to your second point, just to start with, so the experience route might mean that you've got enough evidence to gain chartership or fellowship without having to go through the qualification altogether. So it really depends on your seniority and your level of experience. So sometimes you can get to chartership and fellowship without doing any of that prior study, for those that have the experience. Also, if you've done study or you've got a lot of experience in one particular area, then it tends to be that you perhaps would be able to cross-reference that experience to the assessment criteria. So you could perhaps offset one of those modules. So that's really depending on, and it is a case-by-case basis because everyone is so different, and that's why I say you need to talk to a course advisor, and they need to have a look at your job spec, your person spec, and decide where you are in terms of that, their assessment criteria. And the assessment criteria will be different in a university who design their own programs to the CIPD, so to the training providers. So there would be different decisions that would be made. So, so possibly, if you have lots of experience, at a senior level, you can go through the experience route and perhaps not even have to do another qualification because you're getting exemptions in that way, or you have a part of the qualification that is providing you with that exemption through your specific experience, just for one module, say. And then in terms of the academic year and the flexibility, one of the things about training providers is that they offer a huge amount of flexibility. So it may be that you say, well, actually, I want to study this module this month, that module that month, but I'm going to take 6 weeks off because I don't know, I've got the school holidays or whatever. Then I'm going to do another module. So you can, it's a bit like a sweet shop. You can pick and choose the program design according to your own needs. If you go, for example, down the distance learning route, or if you go to a provider that offers live online with lots of different alternative sessions. So you can say, well, I'm not going to do that module at the moment because that month doesn't suit me. I'm going to leave that module to the end of the program and come back to it. So there's no particular order how you would group those modules. So you can start here, you can then go on to the, I don't know, the 4th module, back to the 3rd module when it suits you. So there's a lot of experience there. But what I would say is that universities, they offer you much more of a group structure and a supportive, like Kate was saying, probably more opportunity for peer learning. However, it depends on the route that you go in. So with the live online sessions, some providers are offering sort of whole days online, where they split you through the breakout groups into what, you know, traditional group work that you would have in a classroom. And they also perhaps might give you collaborative work to do in between sessions, where you would then build your network through group work in different ways. So that can be done quite successfully online. It just depends on the actual shape of the program that provider is running. So what I would say is it's very important to find right at the beginning, what is the mode of study? How is it used? How will that benefit you? And any course advisor will spend the time talking that through with you, and will find, so that you can find out what actually is going to be best of all.
Great. So it sounds like I need to find a course advisor and have a chat with them.
Yes, for a provider that you're interested in following up with, and the course advisor in a university would be the program leader for the program. So what you tend to do in university is you go through the admissions department, and what you might want to say is that you'd like to have a conversation directly with the program leader, so the academic for that program, to find out some more information. But with a training provider, you're likely to go straight through to a course advisor.
Thank you, Kay. That's been really helpful. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks, Liz. Any other questions at all? Okay, so I'm just going to Natalie's question. How much time would need to be put into a blended programme, online and in class? So in 4 times, it's running how much time? Really depends on the level, Natalie. So if we're talking sort of a level 7, I usually say about 10 hours a week of additional study, the online and in class. The in class, it depends so much. So for example, the postgraduate diploma at the University of Suffolk used to run from 1 till 8 every Monday, 2 semesters a year over 2 years. And then there'd be the expectation for an extra 6 to 8 hours of weekly reading and research in support of that. But it really depends on the level. So I'll be slightly less at level 5 and then slightly less at level 3. And if you're going for a digital package, a digital online learning, then there would be, in some cases, no tutor time at all, complete digital learning. And it would just be a case of working through the programme. And again, those hours would depend on elements such as how much additional reading you wanted to do in support of the assignments. And of course, when assignments come up, there's a tendency to focus more on doing wider reading at that time. And then it averages out then with perhaps lower level of required reading and research when perhaps you're going through the course materials. So I hope that helps a little. Very difficult to give a specific response because of course it will be different to the various training providers and the mode of study. So George is saying, so the masters at uni is equivalent to level 7? Yes, it is. It's a level 7 programme. A level 7 programme is at master's level, but it's not a master's degree because there's not enough credits. So it tends to be 120 credits and you need 180 credits to get a master's degree. So that's why extra 60 credits is usually your dissertation. And that's why I say the extra 60 credits you need to get from, if you're doing a top-up, a university, and it's about finding the right university that's going to give you that. So as I say, choose a university that suits you. Some of them will ask you to do 2 extra modules. Some will only require 1 extra module. Some might even let you just get on and do the dissertation and submit it without much in the way of additional tutor help. That will be cheaper. There will be less support. So it's a trade-off. It depends what's going to suit you best. Okay, I'm conscious of the time, so I don't want to keep you too long, but do get in contact with me via LinkedIn if I can help with any further questions, if you think of any. Always delighted to help. And if there are any further questions also, I'm just going to do a little bit here, further reading. This is really what gave me the idea for the session this evening. I've had lots and lots of questions over the years about how can I get ahead in HR. And in this book, I've tried to detail as much as possible about progressing in terms of the CIPD qualifications, how to get a job, and ultimately the future of HR too. So that's just a little bit of further reading if you are interested in that. But otherwise, thank you so much for your contributions this evening. Really good to see HR friends old and new. And thank you to Eleanor and to Kate for their contributions too, and to you all for your questions. And yes, the slides will be sent through also. So have a lovely evening. Thank you, everyone.